Hey guys, this is Mark Howard, author of the Griffin Legends fantasy novel series. Thanks for joining me here. So guys, it has been a minute, a very long minute since we've had the chance to talk here. Apologies for that. I have to admit that some of this has been due to just the day-to-day grind, right? I'm still relatively new at my day job here, and it has unfortunately resulted in a few late nights. But on the flip side, the good news here is that it's not all just been that day-to-day muck that we spend all of our free time trying to escape here. So the first bit of good news is I am now 82 pages into the screenplay adaptation of Godfrey's Crusade. This is a pretty big milestone here. It's not done yet, mind you, but with 82 pages, that means that using standard format here for screenplays and 1 page of screenplay equals 1 minute of screen time. And so very quickly doing our math here, that puts us at 1 hour and 22 minutes, right? With 82 pages, that puts us at 1 hour and 22 minutes into this movie here, which that's pretty cool, right? We're a little over the halfway mark for something like a 2.5-ish hour movie there, which is what I'm shooting for. So talking about screenplays and book adaptations and all that here for just a second here, it's been quite an exciting journey. It's really forced me to grow a little bit as a writer here. It's a different medium, right? And with any kind of translation process, right? I studied Greek and Latin in college here, and I feel that this is fairly analogous, right? When you're changing something from one language to another, you cannot do so perfectly, right? There's nuance that you have to understand the original language to fully appreciate, right? That's what I learned with Greek and Latin, at least, right? And so to put that into another medium, you lose a little bit of that meaning. And the same is true, I have discovered, with writing a screenplay, right? Godfrey's Crusade, as a book, is actually not really all that long for the fantasy genre. It's a little over 106,000 words, which, again, it is a bit on the shorter side, right? A lot of fantasy novels are something like 120,000-ish words. So, but even with my book being on the shorter side for the fantasy genre, I did this calculation pretty early on. And if I were to just do a 1-to-1 conversion here, where Godfrey's Crusade is just scene by scene copied into the screenplay, we would end up with over a 3.5-hour long movie. I would really like that. I like my stuff enough to say, oh yeah, just keep me in front of that screen forever, right? But being realistic here, most of us aren't going to sit that long for just about any movie these days. So this forces us to make some hard decisions, right? We have to decide what to keep, what to cut, and then what to change so that it all still makes sense as a movie. And so we as book readers, we as book writers and book lovers, we can't help but get a little offended with most movie adaptations of books because they end up being untrue to the source material in some way, right? On one extreme, you have people who do this intentionally, right? You have certain screenwriters, like the director of the Starship Troopers movie, who infamously did not even finish reading the book Starship Troopers, decided that the theme was very fascist, I believe was the term that he used, and he went on to make a movie that tried to be a parody of this original book. Now, if you're someone who actually read the book Starship Troopers, you are probably saying, yeah, they got it all wrong there, right? And I would agree with that interpretation that this was not a very faithful adaptation from book to movie here, right? I share many people's criticisms that got the themes all wrong, misunderstood the messaging, so on and so forth, right? So that's one extreme there, where you have some sort of creative differences, where the original author wanted to take things in one direction, and then whoever's making the movie decides, nah, I'm taking it this direction instead. So that's kind of worst case scenario there for a book enthusiast, right? As a fan of the original work, we could get something that just completely misrepresents the author's original intent. So, but even on the other extreme, right, where you've got someone like myself, where I wrote the original book and I want it to be true, or as true as possible to the source material, recognizing the constraints for time at minimum, there are certain things that I have to abridge and I have to cut. And so it leads to these decisions that have to be made. Now, I will say that I think that the adaptation that I am writing is very faithful, and I want it to be very faithful because I am one of those guys who reads a book, watches the movie, and shakes my fist at the screen when they get things wrong, right? And so in my mind at least, I feel that what is shaping up to be the second and third act of this movie are gonna be pretty darn close. That it's going to be just about what you get in the book here. There are a few itty-bitty abridgments that need to happen along the way, but most of it is actually pretty well copy and paste, at least at this point. But I think where a lot of my own personal angst is with this is in the first act, right? For those of you who have read Godfrey's Crusade, you recognize that there is some setup, there's some exposition, right? I mean, it's the very first entry into a new fantasy series, and so there has to be those elements in there, right? That world building where we get to become a little bit familiar with some of the ideas, institutions, characters, all these things that our main characters regularly interact with. A lot of that, unfortunately, for the sake of moving the plot forward, right, to actually get our characters on this crusade, a lot of that has to be abridged. At least that's my feeling at the moment. And so yeah, there's got to be a few changes there. When I started out writing this first draft, I started right on page 1, chapter 1, right? Which is a very exciting opening. I really enjoyed liking it. It's packed with a ton of action. You do get to learn some things about the values of these characters. You learn a lot about the setting, and I feel that all of that is really important, and I would not change that in my book. But I also discovered that while writing this screenplay, that I got roughly 20 pages into this, and we had only just barely met Godfrey, the title character, as the mature version of this character who would star the whole rest of the movie. And I very quickly realized that, okay, 20 minutes in, and we're just now meeting the main character, this isn't going to really work as it is, right? And so one thing that I've decided to do for the second draft, when I go back and start making changes, is that I'm going to have to, unfortunately, cut that chapter 1 opening and fast forward a little bit to meeting Godfrey as a squire, where we can kind of become a little bit more acquainted with the character that we're going to be associated with for the whole rest of the book there. So that's something that is going to change there, I feel. But yeah, so that's largely where we're standing with the screenplay here. So pretty exciting stuff. It's been something I have immensely enjoyed writing here, and it's gone a little faster than I was anticipating. A lot of stuff, like the dialogue in particular, is pretty much being cut and pasted directly from my manuscript here. So that part is easy, at least. But yeah, it's been a fun project, and who knows, maybe something big will come of this. Maybe it will get turned into an actual movie here. If it does, then I'm going to have to really hurry and finish this series, right? The last thing I want to do is become another George R.R. Martin, where the screenwriters run out of source material, and then they just kind of have to cobble something together that no one's really satisfied with. So we're going to try to avoid that. So as soon as we are done with this screenplay, I'm diving straight into book 3. I know a lot of us have been waiting for the third book for a long time. I feel pretty terrible, actually, about not having much to show for that after all this time. But I also feel that working on this screenplay has been a fairly singular opportunity. And so it's, in my mind at least, worth pausing for at least a few short weeks here, try to wrap that up, toss it to the powers that be, and hope that we get a pretty bright future out of that for this series. So anyway, that is that for the screenplay endeavor here. And so the second thing that I want to touch on is the audiobook. I think I've mentioned the audiobook in, I don't know if most videos would be accurate, but certainly in a lot of my videos, I've talked about the audiobook and the progress on that, right? It's something that we have been waiting on it for years, literally here. And I had to, as some of you who've watched some of my previous videos know, I've had to make some hard decisions in regard to that. I had to, unfortunately, cut loose my original narrator on this. I feel fairly badly about that still. He's a good friend of mine who had some struggles, some health issues and that kind of thing. But for the sake of getting the audiobook done, I really felt that it was time to move on. So I reached out to another narrator who has worked extremely hard on this, and we now have a completed audiobook. He has finished it, and right now, the only reason why I have not just hit publish on that little computer screen is I myself am going through some quality control here. I'm listening to the audiobook, getting feedback ready, and it's going to be done really, really soon, though, here. I have to say that I have really enjoyed working with this narrator. His name is Dylan Wheeler. He has done some excellent work here. I think the quality of the narration overall is top-notch, and he went the extra mile in also trying to give us different voices for these characters. Now, I will say that some of these characters sound maybe a little bit different than what I had imagined in my own mind, but when it's one guy doing all the voices and you kind of recognize, like, okay, we can only have so many options here with one guy doing it, I'm pretty well pleased with the result overall here. I can't say that there's anything that has upset me at all with this, and so I'm most of the way through listening to the audiobook here. I've got just a few chapters left. Once that's done, I'm imagining that I give my big stamp of approval, we hit the publish button, and then it will be released to the public fairly shortly after that. So stay tuned for that big announcement when it's ready for you guys. So anyway, that's it for now. Let me know your thoughts on what's going on with the screenplay or the audiobooks. And be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And we will catch you all next time. All right, take care, guys.